Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined this week by Ruairi Walsh and Kieran Collins. Lads, how are things?
Good, Mark. Yourself?
Yeah, great. Going into the Maybank holiday weekend, plenty to talk about. I suppose in this episode tonight we'll look at round one of the Munster and Leinster Senior Hurling Championship games. Plenty of talking points there. We'll also look at round three of the Joe McDonagh Cup, where we had wins for Offaly and Kerry, and Carlow and Laois played out a thriller of a draw. And also, if we have time, have a look at the underage competitions in Munster and Leinster. Rory will actually kick off with yourself. You were in Cusack Park, Ennis, to see Clare against Tipperary. A massively high-scoring affair. I suppose your thoughts on that game? Tipperary won by 5 points.
Yeah, we said last week that we didn't know where Tip ranked, and to be honest, we still don't really know where Tip ranked because they were handed 3 goals in a game that, Clare scored 323 and lost the game, and they've only themselves to blame. So again, it is hard to see, they're not going to be giving goals like that every round. One is enough per game, but to give away 3 like that was just crazy. And I think it harps back from a Clare point of view to team selection. Like Lohan, I was last year full of praise for Lohan in Munster Championship, where every decision he made seemed to be the right one. Even like against Waterford, resting players and keeping the whole momentum going for the team, everything seemed to be right. And even Munster final, you could say the only thing I suppose in hindsight was the Rory Hayes Flanagan, that he didn't switch him sooner off him. But look, All-Ireland semi-final against Kilkenny, I thought he made big mistakes in that game. When Conlon was ruled out for the match, I think there was probably better options than kind of rejigging the whole backline around it. And look, another thing as well here was on Sunday, and I would say it was just bizarre, really. Not saying anything about Foodie, but dropping Eibhear Quilligan, because if you're going on championship form, he was getting better and better as the years went on. And last year his puckouts were superb. We spoke about Munster final last year, how Nicky Quaid and Eibhear Quilligan's puckouts were just like equally as good at either end of the field. And All-Star nominee, and then to lose his place, because I was at the league match with Team Galway and Clare, and Foodie started that game, and I presumed it was just as you do during the league, give equal time to the goalies. I didn't think he'd be starting in championship. Again, I haven't seen a lot of him to judge, to be honest. He's only just made the Aina Kilmona team as starting keeper last year. Patrick Kelly was the goalie up until last year, so he's 1 year of championship club experience behind him, starting for Clare. It's just a huge move to make. If Lohan kind of fancied him as a better keeper, which he obviously did, or because as far as I know there was no injury, maybe put him in a round further down the line, but not the first round game in Ennis. Cauldron against Tipperary coming, the only team who had previously beaten Clare in Ennis in the round robin. It just seemed a bizarre thing. And I know you can say hindsight, but even if Foodie had played well, you'd still be questioning why Quilligan was dropped there. I know we're not seeing what's going on in training, but I still think championship form is still huge. Come back to last year, you look at John Kiley, and despite all the guys who were going well during the league, he went for the guys he knew, in championship have always produced the goods for him. In hindsight, maybe John Kiley might have mixed up a bit more, I don't know. But look, he still sticks with that hardcore 12, 13 players all the time because they've proven record, and I just thought that was bizarre to start with.
It was hardly a disciplinary issue internally, Roy, was there?
Look, we don't know, but I doubt it. From what I know of Eibhear Quilligan, I wouldn't be thinking he'd be the kind to. Look, anyone can have disagreements and stuff. Maybe it was that, but then you'd think he wouldn't be sub goalie. Then I don't know. It just seems a bit strange a decision to start with. As I said, if he rated Foodie as a better goalie, maybe I think you keep your starting position until you, as a goalie, until you do something drastically wrong. Last year Quilligan didn't do anything drastically wrong that. Now the question for me is, will Lohan go with Quilligan the next day, or will he stick to his guns? It's hard to imagine that he will stick to his guns, but it could happen. I wouldn't be surprised.
Absolutely, because goals came at regular intervals here. Guys for Tipperary, I suppose the Jason Ford sideline cut, really kind of exposing a few kind of goalkeeping issues. But I suppose, Rory, getting back to you again as a Clare man, that second and third goal, really the distribution out, the poor first touch, really exposing an awful lot of Clare frailties back there. The mood in the stadium must have been absolutely depressing as hell after that first 15-20 minutes.
Oh yeah, well, especially like the second goal was a killer because Clare hit 6 points in a row and were absolutely flying. I know Tip had just knocked one back in the scoreboard, they're right back in the game, and then to give away a goal in that fashion, like whatever about Tip scoring a good goal, but to give away another goal, and he wasn't entirely to blame there. It was a terrible ball back to him from Flanagan that kind of put him under pressure. He had to come out and meet the ball, which meant he was under pressure immediately. Claimed he was fouled. It would have been a soft free out. We have seen him given. Would have been a soft free out. The third goal then, I suppose, again, John Connon had his fingers on the ball. Like he, you could say John Connon should have caught that ball. Now, the only thing I'd say is those loopy kind of strikes, if you're a goalkeeper hitting to a guy running, it's a lot more, it's a lower percentage than a guy who's standing by the sideline free, who's a stationary target. Now, look, the first goal as well, look, you have to say he's at fault there, but goalkeepers will tell you, like, sideline cuts, like the ball spins differently, like they are difficult to deal with. But just for me, the fact that he wasn't in line behind the flight of the ball, if he was behind the flight of the ball, he was fine, but he wasn't behind the flight of it. He was almost like he was expecting a touch from Cleary or whatever, but if it touches of Cleary and goes into the net, at a different angle, fair enough. I just think as a goalie, you have to be behind the flight of the ball. And if there's a deflection, then, that's bad luck, but you have to kind of, that he was in the wrong position, basically, for the first one. Look, it was a timing of them, as he said, Mark, like Clare coming back into it, concede the second one, come back into it again, concede the third one very quickly. And in fairness to them, they dragged themselves back into it again. Once they started second half, they're 3 points behind with a bit of a breeze. And you're thinking, like, right back in it, and then to have the penalty and black card, again, bad timing. And look, they fought on valiantly, and there were some good performances there. Ryan Taylor going forward, troubled him with his pace. Inside, Rogers, like, super goal first where he spun. Look, so there was a lot to be positive of. Like, scoring 323 should win you any Munster Championship game, and you'd have to think that the bizarre goals they conceded were a one-off. But there is and it's one thing I've been saying, there is a thing with Clare going back a while where it's almost like we have to outscore. It's like Tottenham back in the day where did Ozzy Ardiles winning games 5-4 or Kevin Keegan 6-5. There is that element to Clare. And that's why I thought last year, Munster final, defensively we were very good and shut out Limerick a lot. And I thought maybe here where, Lohan has sorted out the defensive issues, but they really came back to. Another thing as well, and sorry, I'm harping on a bit now, was the huge space in front of the full back line. And we were talking about Adam Hogan there making his debut at 19 years of age, and you put him on Jason Ford, the most experienced Tipperary forward, whatever about that, but having like 40 yards of space in front of them. And Tipperary are we all know are the best team to exploit space. Because their striking is so crisp, and it's something you do is you shut Tipperary down and you make your backline, a war zone in a very little space, and because they thrived in that space, and like all the time, like Morris, so hard, like if you're the cornerback and you're marking Morris or Ford, and the ball is 40 yards of space in front and it's just been played in lovely in front of them, it's really difficult to defend from that position. Like I just thought the setup was wrong there, and I know I'm not a fan of sweeper systems, but sometimes in a game, if Tip have pulled out your backline and there's space there, you have to drop John Conlon to the edge of the D, have to bring a midfielder back to mark. These are adjustments that, like, I would have seen that Clare would have to make very quickly, but to leave that space there for so long was, it turned out to be one of the deciding issues, as well as the goalkeeping errors. Like, that was a massive, tactical mistake. Like,
yeah, sure. Kieran, I'll get you in here. From a Tipperary perspective, I know last week we were kind of saying that this Tipperary side management would be eager to be competitive straight off the bat. I mean, for Liam Cahill and Michael Bevins, I suppose, if they were going to be given a remit from the Tipperary County Board, I think they've achieved it. First day out, first championship win. But an awful lot of pleasing factors here for Tipperary. I thought maybe Cahill Barrett's man-marking job was superb. And again, the forward line, as Ruairi has said, the space, if you're going to create that space inside for a full forward line, adjacent Ford, Jake Morris and Noel McGrath and John McGrath as well, you're going to get destroyed, and so proved.
I suppose if you're looking back to this time last year, it's like a completely different team. You can't imagine the difference in 12 months. To me, like Cahill Barrett, did an amazing job on Tony Kelly, but the first question I would have is, was Tony Kelly off a little bit? Because it's so rare that we see Tony Kelly held to the score in 1 point and didn't have the same influence on the game that he usually would have. But I think up front, Tip were really on fire. I think it's the intensity that it brought this year, the work rate. Look, all these words that are kind of overused every week, but, they were there, puck outs, I think a lot of work has gone into these three things this year. And Liam Cahill teams are kind of associated with goal getters, and really did go for him on Sunday. I suppose one thing for me, Ford, he does puts it in every week. He puts in a good performance. But like Jake Morris, great game, 2-4. But I think the issues in the past we've had with Jake Morris is the consistency, and he needs to do this every day he goes out. He hasn't done in the past, and I suppose that's one for him this year, is if he can build in that game again, because he was really on fire on Sunday. The two McGraths, I thought Noel McGrath was excellent, 3 points. Grode O'Connor, I think the two new guys coming in, Grode O'Connor, Brian O'Mara, just real finds for Tip this year. I think just a big man with Grode O'Connor, 2 points, really hard to handle, and like these young guys are going to get better. I think as well, something that'll please Cahill is 1-3 coming from the bench. Sean Ryan coming in only on a couple of seconds really, and getting Tip's last goal, and I think that was the final sword, nailed the coffin for Clare. But I think one thing I liked about Clare was they never give in, they never packed it in, they kept fighting, and they were fighting all day. Tip went into a 1-3 lead, 1-3 to no score, and a couple of minutes later Clare had a back level, 6 points in the trot. 10 minutes later it was 3-7 to 7 points in favour of Tip, and fair play to Clare, they had a back to 4-point game at half time, and you're thinking, with a bit of a breeze there, they were going to kick on, but it was just, I think Ruairi said it earlier, the goals came at wrong times for Clare, but even so, they didn't give up, they kept fighting, and I think that goal at the end from McCarthy, the score difference could be crucial come the end of the year. The round robin is so, we know it's dog eat dog week on week, but if you have maybe two teams going in with 4 points at the end of the series and it's coming out of score difference, that goal can be crucial. We've seen Galway a couple of years ago lose out on score difference. So I think that I would take that as a plus for Clare, that they didn't give in. They kept the fight on the whole game, and it really was the goals that killed them in the end. I think any team that concedes 5 goals, you're going to be up against it. I think as well, looking into the next day, okay, obviously Lohan's going to have the question mark over his goalkeeper, but does he start Rory Hayes instead of Hogan? Because real talented young guy and has shown all the great signs, but what damage mentally could that do being hauled off after 40 odd minutes? And I don't think he wasn't to blame, but I think that's another question mark. Do you put him back in it again next week? It's going to be a long, hard week for Clare. I think probably, we mentioned last week, the scheduling of games wasn't going to be in their favour because, win or lose last weekend, they were facing into a tough game this week against Limerick in Limerick, and I think just the fact they've lost has made it even harder.
Absolutely. Rory, we get you in there. I mean, if you said to yourself even before this game that Tony Kelly would only be held to 1 point and he still scored 323, I mean, there's an awful lot of positives there, I think, in the attacking front, and definitely with Aidan McCarthy, the 113. Again, a shining light for Clare. I mean, there's optimism here in terms of the attacking sense here, Rory, surely.
Yeah, there is, and David Fitzgerald is back for the Limerick game. I see him slotting in really for Peter Duggan. Duggan, worked hard off the ball. He always gives you everything, but on the ball, he's getting hooked now a bit more often. Compare him to the Duggan of 2018, the pre-Australia Duggan. He's not as good on the ball as he used to be. He's just not getting that bit of space he had. Has he lost a yard of pace? I think so. But Fitzgerald, is dynamic, as we know, extremely athletic hurler, and he'll make a difference as well. Aidan McCarthy is a huge boost. He's pace, striking, missed a lot as well. His frees were an issue again, I think. Now, the ones he missed, there was a lot of frees Clare got that were kind of out by the sideline underneath the stand, and they're kind of low percentage ones anyway, but maybe at this level, and you see the likes of TJ Reid, doesn't matter where they are in the pitch, if they're inside the other half, their points 95% or whatever. But look, that was another small factor. But yeah, as Kieran said, trying to bounce back for Limerick now, it is a tall order. But there's one thing that I suppose in 2019 when Clare went in and got hammered inside the Gaelic grounds, coming off a Tipperary defeat, I'd say that might be used and spoken about a few times this week. That is not to happen. And Clare would have got hard from Waterford as well. Clare would say, well, we can battle like they did, as we proved that already. And now, there is probably a few more strings to Clare's bow up front with McCarthy, Rogers. There is a bit more firepower there, maybe to trouble Limerick, but at the same time, it is. I think in a team, when you ship 5 goals like that doubt has lingered in your mind if you're a backman going out there. Let's say you're playing half back or midfield, that you think at any stage, even if you're up 3 or 4 points, are we going to ship a goal at the other end? like you have to get that confidence back. Holding Limerick to 1 goal on Saturday evening is going to give Clare a huge chance in the game, I think, and it'll give them confidence going forward after that as well. Look, it's not over for them. Like, if Tipperary go on and beat Cork and Waterford, and Clare beat Cork and Waterford, even if Limerick and Clare go through in 3rd place there, and things might open up for them. It's a lot different to last year when they were coasting after the first 2 games. They're under pressure now straight away, and we'll just see what they're made of now. I said, like, Gaelic grounds is short journey in. Clare people have often felt like for lots of Clare it's closer than Ennis. Like, for Sixmont Bridge, it's only 10 minutes in there, and so it doesn't always feel like an away game. Now, it probably will Saturday evening with the Limerick crowd packed in there, but tough place to go and win. But like, we'll see what they're made of now, if they can come out and turn this around, give them great confidence afterwards. But yeah, I just feel like that lingering doubt's going to be there with the back line. Going to have to restore confidence there. Not just switching with the keeper, like, we're still giving up goal chances. And as I pointed out, he was partially to blame in a couple of them. Like, he was put under pressure by his own defence as well. Like, if you're a defender and the keeper's after, like, letting in a soft goal, you don't want to put him under pressure immediately with a pass bouncing in front of him backwards. Like, so small things like that, look, that has to be tidied up. And I'm sure if Clare are going to work on one thing this week, it'll be just tightening up at the back and that gap's going through and closing that space in front of the full forward line. Because again, Gillan, Flanagan inside are going to exploit that, like, they are, and that's what Limerick thrive on, as well as creating that space inside. So, like, that's one thing Clare really have to. And if they have that, it's only one or two major things to fix. Who knows? Like, people didn't see Waterford giving Limerick a close game last week. Like, Clare have the firepower to do it up front. So, at the same time, a good start on Sunday where they don't concede 3 goals in the first 20 minutes, or on Saturday evening, it could be right in there.
I suppose we can focus in on Semple Stadium last Sunday. Limerick against Waterford. Waterford's designated home ground for the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. I think we predicted here in this podcast last week that we felt that Waterford would give this a right go, and certainly they did here, Kieran. 118 to 19 points was the final score. 14-man Limerick, I suppose. Your thoughts on the game?
I think of the 2 teams, Limerick probably started, without blowing Waterford away, they started strong and got into an 8-3 lead, and then the goal came. I think that it was a big change to the team, like both centre-backs and 2 pivotal players for both teams, like Tyke Burka. That guy, only for bad luck, he'd have no luck. A 3rd serious injury in the space of a couple of years, and I think Declan Hannon going off as well. Big losses to their teams. But like Limerick won 8-3 up, and you're thinking, that Limerick are going to put away here. But I think to be fair to Waterford, they battled back. Now, a lot of the scores came from frees, but I think it was a result of Waterford's direct run at Limerick. It caused them all sorts of bother. I think that they had them under pressure, at times defensively, but I think to be fair to Waterford, they're back into it, like, at 4 points down at half time from where they were. I think then the explosive start for the second half from them, 3 early points, getting it back to a point, and it's game on then. And I think that point where Gillan's penalty was saved, and then the chaos that came after it, Limerick 2 points up at that stage, and you're really thinking this is game on. But I think to be fair to Limerick, like, they got 4 points on the trot after that, to bring the lead back to 6, and I think that was huge. That was the point of Limerick holding on to that win, was that them few minutes there, the 4 points. Waterford had the chances. It was documented well all week. But I suppose Limerick on another day could have had maybe another goal after that. I think Dave Ruairi ran in the ball. I think he took the wrong option. He should have taken a shot himself. Gillan was quickly swallowed up in his 2 shots. But, I think Waterford, they got a lot right. I do think that their game plan was to disrupt Limerick and try and stop Limerick, and possibly maybe didn't focus as much on actually going to win it themselves. I think a lot of their game plan was how to stop Limerick in their tracks, and it did work. I think if you look at Keane Lynch, really, really quiet. Grow Hegarty before he was sent off. He wasn't in the game. Kyle Hayes, I think our midfield was completely wiped out. Apart from Tom Morrissey in the half-forward line, he was the only probably player that was in it. I think Peter Casey as well. I think the 2 of them guys really stood up on Sunday. But I think Waterford's tactics then in the second half, when they were in the game, when Limerick were down to 14, it was just like Ozzie Gleeson was on the field. It was just long ball after long ball in on top of them. I think if Waterford had stuck to the game they were playing and ran at Limerick, I think they would have had better results from it. And I think at the end of the day, it was Waterford shots that, and their wides that lost from that game. The 23 shots from play and they scored 9, which is 39% success rate, which is poor. 13 wides in total. And I think for me, the worrying part would be, outside of Bennett, Ozzie Gleeson, and Desi, only 2 other players scored. There's only a point each. I think it was Barron and Gleeson got a point apiece. So, outside of the 3 top guys, there wasn't many standing up. So I think for Waterford, they need to improve in that, and they need more players putting their hand up and getting on the scoreboard. But I think, looking back at it from a Limerick point of view, I think this result probably in a way suits Limerick. We did get the win, we did get 2 points on the board, but I suppose if you're listening in the media all week, if you're listening without knowing the result, you'd think it was the opposite. Every media outlet's talking up Waterford, how well they did. But, I think they did lose, and Waterford are a team under pressure now. They have to go to Cork, who are fresh. Okay, the game might stand to them. I just hope for Waterford's sake that they didn't put too much into this game, and it wasn't all about Limerick, and to forget that they've other challenges ahead as well, because, you're looking at it, if Waterford lose this coming weekend, it's a tough ask to come out of Munster.
Ruairi, can we get you in there? Did Limerick get out of jail on Sunday?
Yeah, they did. Let's not forget as well, it probably should have been 15v13 for the last, because Flanagan's tackle was a red card challenge. You can't say, it wasn't, and it happened in the centre of the pitch as well. And I just thought the referee was really poor in the game. I don't know because apparently what's been said this week is the ref saw the incident and didn't deem it to be a yellow card, red card at the time. So I'm just thinking, if he's refereeing more games and there's more chances from whoever who it is, if it's a Clare man or Tipman or whatever, whoever it is, and there's more chances like that, we're going to have serious injuries, because frontal shoulder that connects with the head, it's a dangerous tackle. Whether it was slightly late or whatever it is, look, we don't know the motives behind it, but the ref is there to in one way protect players as well, and that's in any other sport. Look at rugby, that's a red card straight away, and I don't think it should be any different in hurling, and he did miss that. But at the same time, as Kieran pointed out, when Limerick got the first red card, the response was incredible, and that's when they won the game in those few minutes, when they hit those 4 points in a row. That was the real, that was basically saying to Waterford, even though you've an extra man, we're not going to panic, we're going to keep going through our process. Yeah, so that was a big one. Look, Waterford as well, that Kieran said as well, the shots selection was really poor at times. They ended up with an extra man, but shooting from midfield. Montgomery took a couple of pot shots there that didn't even get near the post, they're kind of bouncing wide, and you just kind of think a lot of Waterford players going home in the bus after, they're just thinking, they had doubts about decisions they had made during the game, because at the end of it, the margins were so tight that just a couple of those bad decisions hurt them in the end. But yeah, look, we spoke as well about will Davey have a game plan? He was talking about it in the media for the last couple of years. And it's one thing having a game plan, but having the players buy into it is the main thing. You can have all the game plans in the world, but if the players don't believe it, and you could see the players did believe it, because when they went down 1-8 to 3 points, they just kept at what they had started with, and slowly clawed their way back into it. Pure disruption, as Kieran pointed out, in your face stuff, not letting Limerick settle. We did say that last week, that would be you cannot let Limerick settle and work the ball through the lines, ball to hand. You have to disrupt, and they disrupted right from the full back line. We spoke about Barry Nash and the impact he had in the league final, but that was obviously Davey wasn't going to give Barry Nash the freedom of Thurles. And look, it did disrupt things. Same thing, Keane Lynch, playmaker at the other end of the field, completely disrupted as well. I'm sure they were 2 targets that would have been picked out by Waterford. And again, though, a defeat is a defeat. I think we said last week that Waterford nearly had to kind of win this game to kick them off, because it doesn't get easy now. They have Cork away. Then, you're looking at Clare and Thurles as well. So they've, as you pointed out, they've no home game coming up. So it's going to be tough for them. And especially with the Burka out now going forward. It's just a hard man to replace for them. And I know he's been injured an awful lot for them. So you could say they're almost used to him not playing, but when he's playing, he's such a pivotal player. He's so clever in his positioning, does that job perfectly. Probably does it better than any other player in the country, that kind of deep centre back role. And for him to be out, considering Davey would have been planning the whole back line around him, it's a huge blow for them. But look, championship injuries come. It's about how you react to them and how you respond. Limerick probably have shown that they're really good to respond to any major injuries they got. We saw that with Keane Lynch last year. So Watford can't feel sorry for themselves. They got to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, because the game's come thick and fast.
I think you kind of summed it up very well there. I think Waterford's shot selection just thinking of Stephen Bennett free from close range. I'm thinking of Desi Hutchinson's point effort from about 30 metres out. Young Fitzgerald came on, was very lively. Bad wide there with about 5 minutes to go. So, I mean, there was opportunities there for Waterford. But I suppose take nothing away from Limerick, 14 men Limerick, did enough. But I suppose have gotten the wake-up call here. And I suppose we can preview round 2 here, guys. I mean, Limerick Clare into US Gaelic grounds on Saturday. And we have Cork against Waterford. I suppose, Rory, your thoughts on these 2 games? How do you see them going?
Limerick Clare, look, walking out of Cusack Park, I suppose I kind of thought, oh no, like Limerick next week. And especially, as Kieran said, the close scare they got against Waterford, that you could just tell that Kylie and Kinark would have been unhappy with a lot of things and be putting pressure on the players to get them right. You're just hoping like that Clare will get pick themselves up and go into it. The Limerick team has been named tonight. Hegarty has been dropped. Cathal O'Neill is on. And usually Limerick go with the team they select as well. Hannon is back in as well, so we were worried that Hannon would miss out due to injury, but has recovered now. Again, maybe there's a fitness test there involved with that. So look, that's kind of the only change in the team. So again, from a Clare point of view, you know exactly who you're facing. You're just to be honest, I think Limerick, I find it hard to see Clare winning this one, but again, it's Munster Championship. You can't rule it out, and it's all got to do with the start. I think if Clare get a good start and they're in it, just like the Munster final last year, where they never let Limerick get more than 2 or 3 points, keep them in arm's length, you're in with a chance. So yeah, look, I'd give them a go there. I've been in the game, but if you're put my head in the block, I'd have to go with Limerick here. Yeah, based on, I think there's more improvement in what Limerick have done. Clare, of course, need to shut up the backline, and they just don't have confidence that we can keep a clean sheet or even keep Limerick to a goal. If we can, we're right in there. Cork Waterford, I fancy Cork here. A bit like what Kieran think, there was just a huge effort thrown in there now by Waterford. Cork, this was Cork's date from all along that they've been looking at and aiming for. And Pat Ryan knows league. I know they ended up in the league semi-final, but you could tell by the performance out in Nolan Park, they weren't really too pushed about going any further, because he knows that it's all about this game here against Waterford, getting the first win on the board. And, Cork are in the mix. Yeah, I just think that Cork, with their underage success, it's about time the seniors, I know they were in an Ireland final a couple of years ago, but they haven't been a consistently strong team over the years, up 1 week, down another week. And that's what Pat Ryan will be looking for, his consistency, especially from some of the players as well. I think that's the reason. The likes of Conor Lehane over the years haven't been fully dependable on what level of performance they'll give. But that's something I'm sure that he'll be looking for this week. Yeah, I actually fancy Cork there. So Limerick and Cork are my predictions.
Yeah, sure. And Rory, you've alluded to this team news. I mean, the one change is Cathal O'Neill in for Gerard Hegarty, Nicky Quaid in goal, Sean Finn, Dan Morrissey, Barry Nash, full backline, Dermot Burns, Declan Hannon, obviously back in, half back in Kyle Hayes, O'Donovan midfield, O'Neill, Lynch, Tom Morrissey, half forward line, and Aaron Gillan, James Flanagan, and Peter Casey. So I suppose, Kieran, from that perspective, any reaction to that team news?
Yeah, I think the one surprise was Declan Hannon there, because I think he'd been muted to be out for at least 2 games. I was sat directly in front of where Hannon was stationed first half, and he just didn't look right from the off. And I know he was carrying a flu illness the week before, and I wonder if it was related to that, because he just didn't look himself and wasn't travelling himself, and we kind of called it early enough that he didn't look great. And he gave, one ball came in and he put it straight into, I think it was Ty DeBurka, and it just, it wasn't Declan Hannon at all. So I think I was kind of in my head planning without him this week, but I think it's very good call for Hegarty. I think we've seen Kylie, he shows these ruthless streaks from time to time. He did a couple of years ago with Gillan. Gillan was not performing to his own standards, and okay, it might have only been a half a game on the bench, but it works wonders. And I think it just shows that the senior players that just because you've had that jersey for the last couple of years doesn't mean it's always going to be yours. And Cathal O'Neill, I think he's had a very good start to this season. Hasn't done anything wrong, and at least deserves the starting berth. And I think in turn we'll give Hegarty a kick in the arse, to hopefully make him better for the year ahead. Yeah, no, I'd be happy enough with that team.
Yeah, and your tips for the weekend in Munster?
Yeah, I think Limerick and Clare, like I just said earlier, even though Limerick won, I think it's been treated as like we've lost. And I think Kylie will have, and Kinark will have a lot of, they'll have a stick to beat the team with this week. There's a lot of Limerick players, and mainly down to Waterford, and the work rate they brought, but I think a lot of players were completely out of that game. I think you're hoping that Keane Lynch or Kyle Hayes won't be as quiet or ineffective again. And based on that, I'm expecting bigger performances. I think more so from certain players. I think Keane Lynch mainly. The one thing I'd like for Limerick is, I think in history they haven't deployed man markers for the likes of Tony Kelly, but I think Aid McCarthy adds another side to this Clare team this year, and I think if they're to let these two guys run the field, it could be one that might come back to bite them. Maybe at least one of them be marshalled, which is obviously I said we haven't done it in the past, but two very good forwards, and I think at least Tony Kelly needs to be marshalled in some way because I think what he creates is, it could spell disaster for Limerick. I think just based on that, I think Limerick will, they can put everything into this game. They've no game next week. They've actually going to have kind of a 2 or 3 week spell off, and I think they'll throw everything at it. I think Clare would have their own demons after last weekend, and they'll have question marks. I think they'll a score, a point, maybe 2 in the difference, but just going to give it to Limerick on that one. I think for the Cork Waterford game, for me, like usually we'd look at a team who's had a game advantage or have a game the previous week. It's an advantage to the team who hasn't played. It'll all depend how Waterford come out of that game. It was really physical encounter, and a 1 week turnaround isn't a lot. I think for me, Cork, it's so hard to know what Cork team are going to get. I don't think we've seen the full 1 to 15 this year, even in the league. It was, Pat Ryan tried so many players. I do think if Waterford bring that work rate and that physicality, how will Cork react to it? That's the one question mark I have is, how will Cork deal with that physicality? Like Waterford are as big a side as Limerick are. You look at their half back line, the 2 wing backs like Jack Fagan, Callum Lyons, like monster men. And if Callum Lyon plays the role he played last year, making runs up the field, how will Cork deal with this? I think Cork will need Harnedy to start. Possibly will need Horgan as well. I think for me still there's question marks over Cork. I'm yet to see it this year. I think Waterford, well, it'll all depend how they come out of the game last weekend, but just based on having the game, probably a more physical side, just going to give it to Waterford, just because I have so many question marks over Cork yet.
Completely agree. I'm going to go a draw between Limerick and Clare. I think there's not much motivation between these two sides when they meet, and I think Clare, it's backs against the wall stuff this week. I expect a massive Clare challenge here, Ruairi. And I think Limerick are not going to really adopt a man marker here, I think, on Tony Kelly for sure, and I think Tony Kelly will prosper. I just think there's a draw here. I think Clare know if they can get something out of this game, that will galvanise and launch a platform. And Limerick, I think there is a few questions here, particularly in our half-back line. No passing, no running line. It's foundation. The midfield was completely routed, and we had question marks over that half-forward line. So there are questions in that Limerick team as well. I think it's a draw. I think these two were evenly matched last year, and I do see the same here again. I think for Cork and Waterford, it all really depends on Cork, doesn't it? The unknown enigma, that's Cork. Historically, they've been really slow starters in the championship, and I mean, maybe that's a hopeful point for Waterford, but how did Waterford come out of that Limerick game? I mean, it was a very bruising affair. I'd hedge it to Cork by 2 or 3 points, but I would not be at all surprised here if Cork underperform massively in a first round game. So
I think about with Cork, Mark, you have a question like, did Dara Fitzgibbon come back in? Having very little, intercounty hurling done. Robbie O'Flynn obviously coming back from injury as well, but these guys are coming in, no hurling, no time on the field. So, if these, I think there probably will be 2 guys who would start, but just so many question marks. So many question marks at the minute.
I think I'd start them. And look, if they run out of gas due to being injured, but I think you go from the very start. You put Robbie O'Flynn in and Fitzgibbon. They're so crucial to the way, because O'Flynn was given a great performance before he got injured in that game. Remember it?
Huge.
He was on for man of the match at the time, and look, he's probably one of the most honest of the Cork forwards in terms of his work rate and effort. And maybe look, him being on the pitch and inspires other lads around him to up their effort as well. Yeah, look, as well, you were talking about the man marker for Tony Kelly. Like, I can't understand why Limerick don't go man mark, because the counties have had success on Kelly. Like, you're thinking of Mikey Butler last year for Kenny, Cathal Barrett the last day.
Wexford with Shane Reck as well, to be fair.
Yeah, they deployed one, and Kelly has caused so much damage against Limerick. The only game he was really quiet against Limerick was the 2019 game, but the whole team were quiet that day in the Gaelic grounds. But in all other games, Munster Championship, he's caused fierce problems for Limerick. Like scoring like huge scores, like 5-6 points from play. You can't afford to give up 5-6 points to play, because as Kieran pointed out, like there is more scorers in him as well. Giving him 5-6 points, you still have Aidan McCarthy there now, and the threat inside of goals too with Rodgers, and possibly maybe Shane Meehan getting a bit more time. He was injured all league and just came on the last day. Didn't get much ball inside. But look, there are a few options there as well, but it's not all about Kelly, as he pointed out. But at the same time, I can't understand why you wouldn't try and man mark him.
The only thing I think the difference for Limerick this year is it seems to be more of an emphasis on going for goal. I think last year Limerick were happy to pot points over all day, but I think you look at Flanagan took his goal, Hegarty could have had a goal, it was saved over. Had Gillan taken that penalty, it was a completely different game. We were going in a couple of points, 5 points up, and that row mightn't have happened, after that. And I think at the end as well, I think Reedy's just, back on the field after a long layoff. I think if he had another goal at that run into goal, he would have taken the shot himself. I think that was the one to take. So there seems to be more of an emphasis on goals. So I think if Limerick can put 2 or 3 goals on teams, it just makes it a bit harder for them to get to them, I think.
And the last thing about last weekend is I read this daft article there about how goals have gone out of hurling, and it was an absolute goal fest. 8 goals in Cusack Park. There could have been 6 goals in Thurles. Penalties missed and lads missing chances 6 yards out. There was never as many goal chances in games.
Oh no, absolutely. No, the hurling championship delivered. I suppose, lads, we can get on to Leinster Senior Hurling Championship round 1 here. I suppose main headlines coming from that: Galway beating Wexford by 6 points, Kilkenny having far too much against an injury hit Westmeath, won by 22 points, and Antrim maybe losing a glorious opportunity to beat Dublin in Corrigan Park. I suppose, Ruairi, can we get your reflections on the Leinster round 1? What stood out for you?
Look, we tipped Antrim up last week, and they were within seconds of having a famous victory. More so as well, because Dublin seemed to have gone backwards. And this isn't got to do with management either. Just the player turnover they've had, and it was a great opportunity. And still, though, I would give Antrim a good chance going down to Wexford Park this week as well. They're going to be buoyed by their performance, and they know that there's nothing really between, let's say, Dublin and Wexford. So if they could perform that highly against Dublin, why can't they back it up 1 week later? So I give them every chance. That's going to be a tight game, I think, down Wexford Park. We won't even talk too much about Kilkenny Westmeath. It was just a complete mismatch. Does nothing really for either team, to be honest about it. And we were hoping Westmeath would be competitive, and the early signs are that they're going to be, way off it in Leinster. But look, here's hoping they can improve over the next few rounds. That playing these games brings them on a bit. And then, of course, brings us to Galway Wexford. And that game, Evan Island finally stepped up. We spoke about where would Shefflin find him a position for him, because he was trying him in every position in the forward line. So the answer was give him a kind of a free roll, give him every position. So named him corner forward, and in fairness to him, he's picked up pockets of space, came on the loop so many times, and in fairness to his teammates, their heads were looking for him each time, because he's an absolute sharpshooter. The only worrying thing for Wexford is how many scores did he get where he could actually had time to stand and strike, look and strike, but you can't fault him for that. He can only face what's up against him. But Galway needed somebody to kind of step up, I suppose. Joe Canning, big scorer for years for them, and even off frees as well. He was superb off frees. So look, he needs to back that up as well, though. I suppose in the past, Galway have had false dawns from lads coming in, shooting the lights out 1 week and going missing the next week. So he needs to follow that up again all the way through the championship. But look, Wexford had every chance here. The start they got, every chance, but they just weren't at Galway's level. As the game went on, just fell away, and that third quarter was men against boy stuff. I think it was 9 points to 1, and that was in that period, and they were just completely blown out of it in that period. And to go up to Salthill and have such a good start and be right in the game, but just to fall away so badly, was really worrying for Wexford going forward here. Can they both look, beating Antrim, they're kind of back in it again. To be honest, beat Antrim, beat Westmeath, and it's going to be Wexford versus Dublin then. So they still have that chance of qualifying. They know that Galway Kilkenny are probably going to beat all the other teams in it. So yeah, look, they're still in it, but they have to fix things very quickly, because that was way off what's required if they're going to be serious contenders.
Yeah, Kieran, 11 points from 65 minutes essentially. The last 65 minutes really tells a tale of the tape here, Kieran. I suppose from a Wexford perspective, you're based down on Wexford. What's the reaction been like down on Wexford to that performance?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were worried going into the game. There's been so much talk during the league about personnel and injuries, and I think from the name team, the team that were named, you're thinking, right, okay, we're back to our nearly full strength 15, and then the news before throwing that Lee Chin and Damien Reck weren't going to take the field like your captain and vice captain. I think it was a big ask for Conor Foley coming in at 6, really inexperienced, like and to come in at 5 or 10 minutes notice was really a big ask. I think the only plus for Wexford, I suppose, that they held Galway they were goalless for the game, which if they're going to take it, I thought defensively Wexford probably did okay. I think Matthew O'Hanlon had a really good game. I think with that spell, we always said it there, like Galway were 3 behind coming into half time. Between then and into the second half, Galway scored 12 out of 13 points. And that was the game one at that stage. And I think it was similar in the earlier league game this year. It was a level game at half time, and Galway just came out and blitzed them, and I think they won pulling up in the league, and I think it was similar. You probably have to question, and look, the weather conditions weren't great, and probably had a factor on play as well for Galway. I think Wexford also had 2 kind of half goal chances, and then the penalty. Look, Conor McDonagh, like that's, that penalty, that was scandalous. Attempted a penalty. I know, like Mark Fanning usually would be the penalty taker. He's off the panel. A lot of speculation. He walked away. No one knows. But you're an intercounty hurler, and the experience Conor McDonagh has, you have to at least make a better effort than that. And if there were 17 points, 2-6 at that point. If that goal goes in, you're right back in the game. And God knows what could happen. I think another disappointment for me is Roy O'Connor scoring 4-5 points from frees, but in play, I'd say Roy O'Connor up there with Chin would be Wexford's go-to guys, and he needs to do more in play. He's the one. He was supposed to be the main man there, and I think he needs to do more in play. And are they that reliant on Chin? Maybe Chin brings O'Connor on, but you can't be that reliant on one player. I think Wexford, they're going to get a test for sure. I think Antrim are probably feel they let one go, and they'll bring a strong game, and probably a strong belief that they have a right chance against Wexford, and rightly so. I think looking at that game, Dublin only took the lead in the 67th minute after a Burke goal, and I think looking at Dublin, and they're again Donald Burke 1-9, but I think one player that really stood up for Dublin, Kieran Sullivan, coming in with 6 points. But apart from that, there's only 4 other players with 1 point, and I think that's where Dublin are really lacking. Ronan Hayes back in the field, not scoring, but did run with the ball and cause Antrim all sorts of trouble. I think Dublin need more up front. Obviously, Kieran Sullivan, great to see him standing up, but you probably would worry for Dublin. But yeah, I think Antrim have every chance of coming down this weekend.
Absolutely, and when they saw the turnover rate from Galway here, Galway's scores, 66% of them came from Wexford turnovers during the game. I thought that was a big stat on the day, and I suppose for Dara Egan, it's probably a bit of an alarm bell moment there as well. But I suppose from let's review round 2 then, guys. I mean, Wexford Antrim, Dublin entertaining Westmeath and Parnell Park, and Kilkenny Galway is probably the showstopper round 2 fixture. I suppose, Rory, can we get a few predictions from you in those games?
Yeah, look, Wexford Antrim to begin with. I think Wexford might scrape over it, but this is touch and go. Just home advantage. They probably have a better performance in them. I don't know what the story is with Rory O'Connor, Lee Chin, or Rory O'Connor going to be featuring.
I think Chin was touch or go for the weekend, and I think maybe the decision was that maybe the Antrim game would be the game to go for. And I think Damien Rack would be back in as well. But there's huge performance needed.
Yeah, based on them being available, I'd probably give Wexford the nod. Dublin Westmeath, look, Dublin are going to win that one. You're just hoping Westmeath be more competitive. They'll see Dublin as a better opportunity to maybe shove it up to them. But yeah, it's going to be Dublin, and then Kilkenny Galway. They're going to meet again in the Leinster final. Let's not make any doubt about that. So at the same time, it is setting on a marker, and you will learn a lot about guys from both sides, because you're talking about both sides are going to be right in there. Like, we're talking about top 4 teams, top 5 teams in the country. So look, if you want to test the guy out, this is where you'll find out whether he's up native championship material or not, because you won't get anything easy. I just think Galway are probably, like Kilkenny, maybe with new management, are kind of maybe a slow burner in that they can kind of take their time and wind things up a bit and, you know, hit form as they get towards the Leinster final and knockout stages. I just think Galway maybe seem to be coming off that second-hand performance the last day, might kind of just get them over the line here. So yeah, I'm going to go my trio: Wexford, Dublin, Galway.
Kieran?
I suppose Dublin, Westmeath. Felt sorry for Westmeath last weekend. They're kind of, you know, I think there were 3 or 4 injuries, and Killian Doyle being one of them. But like 4 points from play is just not good enough at this level. You know, you'd have to say Dublin hands down, and it might be an opportunity. I think if I was Micheál O'Donoghue, I'd be resting the likes of Donald Burke, you know, because he's going to be needed in rounds to come. So yeah, I think Dublin over Westmeath. When you look at Antrim and Wexford, I think if Lee Chin, Damien Reck, Roy O'Connor, if Wexford's main guys are on the field, you know, Antrim, they seem to perform better at home. Obviously, the weather conditions were terrible last weekend in that Dublin game. And look, they're going to get the same weather conditions in Wexford Park because there's always a wind here as well. I just think if Lee Chin takes to the field, that it's a different Wexford team. And I'd be very surprised if Wexford don't win, so I'm going to give it to Wexford. Kilkenny and Galway, you know, you look at Galway, look at Nyland, as Roy said, like the space he was on, he's not going to get that space in Nolan Park. One swallow never made a summer, so I'd be holding my judgment on Nyland. I always have question marks on his involvement from play, but I'd say a lot of them points were, you know, at his will last weekend. I do think Kilkenny, look at Adrian Mullen getting back off in their game, 6 points from play. TJ back on the field, you know, John Donnelly chipping in with 4 points. Kilkenny at home, and it does lay down a marker, but I think it also, you know, you want to make sure that your position is safe early. You know, Kilkenny, their last game is to Wexford in Wexford Park, and they don't want to go there chasing the results, looking for points. So I think both teams will be all out to secure, you know, their place in the Leinster final, I suppose, really, but secure at least top 3. I think it will be, you know, both teams going hell for leather. I think Galway have had a couple of weeks break, and that game last weekend, I don't know how much they'll learn from it. Kilkenny at home, and you know, we know what we get from Kilkenny. They bring the work. They bring every time they take to the field. They just have that attitude, and they won't want to be beaten at home. And I think I'm going to give it to Kilkenny.
My tips, I suppose, Dublin Westmeath. I suppose if the injuries don't ease up for Westmeath, could be a long afternoon for them in Parnell Park. I'd say Dublin by 10 points, with Donald Burke to the forefront. Wexford Antrim. I feel there's a shock on here, guys. I genuinely do. I think Wexford open display last weekend fell well short of what's expected in intercounty hurling, and I think Antrim, if they come with the physicality, if they come with the turnover rate that Galway produce, even a 50% turnover rate here, I think they're well in this game. I think Antrim may get something out of this game, guys. I think this might be a draw, to be perfectly fair. And Wexford did show last season here that they dropped points away to Mullingar in Westmeath, and Westmeath were very physical and turnovers there on Wexford players. So I think that could be the game to watch. I think Kilkenny Galway, there could be a bit of shadow boxing going on here. And I suppose Kilkenny, with Derek Ling in charge, I think will go all out. So I'd give the marginal bet to Kilkenny by 2 or 3 points. But I just have a sense that Galway may be holding things back for a Leinster final potentially. So yeah, with that, guys, maybe we can go to Joe McDonagh Cup, round 3 in the books. We have the bye week this weekend. I suppose the key headlines here were wins for Kerry and Offaly. And there was a thrilling draw in Netwatch Cullen Park in Carlow. It was at that game between Carlow and Laois. And I mean, Kieran, looking at Laois controlled the affairs here in this game for long stretches. But again, there seemed to be a bit of shaky confidence. Looking at Laois for the first time this season, there's just an underlying confidence issue with Laois not to put away teams. And Carlow plugging away after the red card. Got their just results with a late Marty Kavanagh goal to equalise, I suppose, for Laois. They're kind of looking down the barrel here a little bit to qualify for top 2 here in Joe McDonagh.
Yeah, at the minute they're in 4th position in the league after the 3 rounds. But yeah, I think if you look at it, like at one stage in the first half, Laois were 6 points up. Carlow clawed them back in again, and I think it went down to 7 again in the third quarter. You know, and you're thinking any team worth their salt, 7 points up, that they'd see the game out. And I suppose that the red card to Fikar Fennell and 52nd minute doesn't help affairs for them. Carlo battled on, and the late Cavan a penalty to level the game. And yeah, I think this is one that Laois probably will feel they left behind. Local derby. Laois have been Division 1 hurling for the last couple of years, and you'd imagine they'll have gained experience to see off, the Division 2 sides, I suppose, that has been. But like, to be 7 points up, second half, deep in the second half, they should be seeing it out. But look, fair play to Carlo for battling on and getting the late goal. But yeah, I think definitely the Laois should be seeding after this.
Absolutely. I think Stephen Maher particularly, he had a running duel with Marty Kavanagh throughout the game to clean that first half. They're going point per point. They were very proficient on frees. Ross King as well emerged to form, 4 points. Stephen Bergen with 1-1. So, a few Laois fans in front of me, I think they were rather disgusted, particularly in that final quarter when numerical advantage. But it was just, that underlying confidence issue. And I think for Carlo, it's a key draw for them. Keeps them in touch here going into key games against Down away in Ballygran. And also the pivotal game, round 5 against Offaly in Netwatch Cullen Park. I suppose we can go to Offaly here. A sluggish start, admittedly. I think Johnny Kelly was quick to point that out against Down after 24 minutes. Down held a 1-5 to 7 point lead over Offaly, but then Offaly went through the gears, led by Owen Cahill and also Kiley as well, with 116 collectively. Too much for Down on the day here, Kieran.
They did start, I suppose, they weren't at their best, but it's been a long 7 or 8 weeks for Offaly now at this stage, going from the league and league final into Joe McDonagh. So I think of all the teams in Ireland at the minute, they're one that is deserving of a break. But, at half time or just after half time, with 16 points to 111, with 45th minute. And then Offaly got to 1-3 without reply and 6 points in a row to see the win out. And I think the one thing that'll please, again, Cahill coming in with 112, I think he's averaging something like 115 a game, so incredible scoring. But they had 10 different scores over the game as well, and I think with all respect to Down, I think Offaly saw it out in the end, and they will enjoy this week off, I think, coming.
Yeah, Offaly in a great position. I suppose, Ruairi, coming to you then in terms of these results, and also Kerry heading to Hawkfield Centre of Excellence in Kildare to play Kildare. I suppose Kerry, it was a tough, uncompromising game. There was a red card here that an awful lot of Kildare fans that I've spoken to on social media weren't happy with. But Kerry getting the win, 117 to 14 points, a key win for Kerry to keep them in that top 2 berth.
Yeah, and a big thing here as well was we're talking about how Kerry have strengthened their squad and strengthened depth. Kerry got 1-4 off the bench. Kildare had no scorer coming in off the bench. And look, that's crucial when it comes down. And Jordan Conway, who we mentioned before, seems to be like one of these guys who's a super sub. Doesn't seem to go as well starting, but just give him 10 minutes off the bench or 15 minutes is enough. He came on and scored 1-2, and the crucial goal, 70th minute, it was probably in the balance, right until then. So it was a much improved performance by Kildare in terms of how competitive they were right to the end until that goal, more or less. Look, overall it's been a disappointing campaign for them, something that so much promise earlier in the year. Look, they have Down to come now. You're just hoping that they'll finish up with get a couple of wins on the board and not end up in a relegation scrap. Down has shown a bit of improvement. That's one thing we're kind of hoping for from Down's campaign, because they were so far off it. But as you pointed out, hung with Offaly for a lot longer than they had in previous games and the previous matches. And then Laois, it looked a very soft red card for me. Fennell's red card was an innocuous enough challenge. It was a free. That was basically all it was. But at the same time, they had enough hurling to see it out, and we can't point back to it, but they still should have seen it out. And look, it could be Laois's chances gone. They're relying on favours now elsewhere. Relying on Offaly beating Carlow in that last game, maybe then getting through and some sort of a score difference. If they win out, they'll be level on points in with Carlow at the end and trying to sneak into a second place. But they're going to have to beat Kerry, and that's going to be a huge one now because Kerry still have Laois and Offaly to play, so. It's still in Kerry's hands, but they've 2 wins and a draw as well, isn't it? So it's shaping up nicely, and Laois aren't out of it, but that was thrown away 2 points there, and they're gonna have to battle to stay in it now.
Absolutely. I think as well, Mark, when you look at Kildare, 6 points from play, from a team that, we all talked about the great league they had, and they were so close to Division 1 hurling, but now they're in a genuine battle to keep their Joe McDonagh status for next year, because it's been a quick turnaround in a few weeks, to go from heroes to zero, in 3 weeks. a tough campaign, and like facing into Laois next game again, it doesn't get any easier.
Given the bye week, I think Offaly can be very happy with themselves. 3 from 3, 6 points, up and away here. And I suppose Kerry as well, but there's some titanic games scheduled. I mean, you see Offaly Kerry straight off the bat here. Also, Kerry entertaining Laois in that last game in round 5. Carlow Offaly, I mean, that's titanic. And also Kildare down to decide who goes down from Joe McDonagh as well. So I think this competition may have a few more twists and turns before the end of the regular season campaign, because top 2 qualify, obviously. And for the All-Ireland preliminary quarterfinals, I suppose, guys, can we finish up maybe underage Munster, Leinster, minor, under-20s, anything catch your eye in the last week? Maybe Ruairi, start with you first.
So it's going to come down to Cork beating Clare up in Ennis. As we pointed out, Adam Hogan couldn't play due to the 7-day rule. So Limerick are playing Cork tomorrow night live in TG Carr. And if Cork win, Clare will go through. If Limerick win, Limerick will go through. So Clare are lying in a favour. Owen Downey will be able to play for Cork, because remember, he's suspended for the senior team. So with the 7-day rule, if he was in Pat Ryan's plans, he obviously would have been pulled for the game on Friday night. But probably fortune favours somebody when there's a red card, and it's favoured the 21 management in this case, because they have him available to select, because he's a key player for that under-20 side, and may turn out to be a key player for the senior side. He showed promise of the league, although still we have to judge these guys in the heat of championship battle as well. So yeah, look, it's still all to play for there. In the minor, it's Cork beat Limerick in the Gaelic ground, so Cork are straight into the final, and it's Clare with a home venue against Limerick. So the minor times has been really good. I've gotten to a few games, and the standard's really good, and great to see. Like these are very entertaining matches. If there's, if you're not on anything on a midweek night now with long evenings, like the standard is top class. Like, and players, like it seems like that nerves kind of have gone out the window. Like before, you'd see nervy performance. I think it's the fact they're so used to playing these games now with round robins. By the time it gets to round 3, like this, the nerves are gone, and you're just left with a good product to watch. So yeah, look, so it's kind of settled at minor, and then at under 20, as we pointed out, that last game tomorrow night is crucial. Also, in fact, I think if Waterford beat Tipperary, that will also put Clare through. So we're relying on 2 potential favourites. But remember, Waterford now, Patrick Fitzgerald played, so he's their main target man inside, the Ballygunner man, and he is out for their 20s team because of this rule, and he'll probably again be featured against Cork in the senior match anyway on Sunday. So
Kieran, anything to call out there from the underage?
Carrying on from the last few years with Cork, we've known that their underage success, and it's carrying on again. Both teams in the minor and the 20s in the shake-up, and I expect a great game tomorrow night between Limerick and Cork. And I suppose the only downside for Limerick is Adam English picking up an injury in the Tipperary game last week. They lost out by 2 points. Looking at Leinster, I think Dublin beat Laois tonight to reach the semi-final. So, we talked about the Dublin under 20s, but the minors seem to be going okay again. They're playing Galway, which will be a real tough test. This Galway team looks really good. They're favourites to win out the All-Ireland series. And if Kilkenny and Wexford on the other side, I think these both games are both on Monday. So both 4 teams vying for the final spot in Leinster. And in the 20s, Dublin and Kilkenny are into the semi-finals. They both topped their tiers. They're waiting. Offaly play Galway and Westmeath play Wexford. Not sure where these games are fixed for. Obviously, for Dublin, great to see both teams in the semi-finals in both codes. So I suppose some good games coming in the next 2 weeks.
Absolutely, no. Really looking forward to that under 20 game between Limerick and Cork. I think there should be plenty of fireworks, given the permutations and given what the result may mean to both sides. I suppose, guys, we might leave it there. It's been a lengthy one. Plenty to cover. Many thanks, Ruairi. Many thanks, Kieran, for the contributions tonight. I suppose in the next podcast, we'll review the Munster Senior Hurling Championship and also Joe McDonagh. Enjoy the long weekend, guys, and have a good weekend.
Cheers, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.